is the chess part of the game right now, right? We're not playing checkers anymore.
McCoy's got a slight side advantage. Delane is more polished. McCoy's got the greater downside risk. The Raiders aren't trading out of number one. Ty Simpson is not going ahead of Fernando Mendoza. You draft a guy like Ty Simpson, you've got some job security. There's no debate in my mind. He's going to be a first-round pick. There's probably 50 different players that are going to go in the first round, although there's only 32 selections.
Welcome to the latest edition of the ES DraftCast with Tony Pauline. Tim Wood, Tony Pauline here with you. Going to bring in a new addition to the ES team here in just a couple minutes. But Tony, how are you doing this fine day?
Working hard. Actually, it's a little bit of downtime now that the pro days are over. Indiana had a pro day last week. Tennessee had a pro day last week. It wasn't very eventful. I mean, everyone was all hyper because Francisco Mendoza had a great workout. I mean, I don't think it really mattered much, short of his arm falling off. Francisco Mendoza. But I mean, now it's a little bit of downtime because the teams, as we spoke about at our last DraftCast, they'll get ready for their final draft meetings. Information will dribble out. Updated the big board, which we'll talk about. So they'll have some more scouting reports to go in the big board. And wow, I mean, the draft is 2.5 weeks away. It kind of freaks me out.
It's nuts. Absolutely bonkers. How we obviously read your stuff on Essentially Sports, and like you said with Mendoza, it was a show to behold, and NFL Network actually did a live broadcast from it. What any takeaways on the Tennessee pro day beyond anything that caught your eye there?
No, I mean, I was getting reports, but there wasn't really a whole lot there. Joshua Josephs, the edge rusher, had some good testing numbers. Didn't rerun the 40 again, but it looks like he solidified himself as a day 2 selection. A lot of questions about Joey Aguilar. There are some people who like him. There are some people who don't like him. The quarterback from Tennessee last year by way of Appalachian State. He's got an arm. He's got decent size. Accuracy is a bit of an issue. He threw well, but again, you're throwing against air. There's no defenders there. And his accuracy and consistent accuracy was up and down last season. Kittlesman, the tight end, is just not a fast guy. Obviously, I guess the big takeaway would be Jarmod McCoy, the cornerback who did not play in 2025, runs a 4.38. He looks like he's fully healthy. And that's fantastic. People are going to talk about McCoy and Delane battling to be cornerback number one. I think McCoy's probably closed the gap a bit, but I think Delane is definitely the number one cornerback in the draft.
Any buzz, not so much on the field, but any buzz around the wide receiver, around Brazel? Brazel?
I mean, I think there'll be more information about that moving forward. Physically, he's really good. He's a terrific receiver that's developed his game. He's not a one-year wonder. He had a good combine. And I'm just hearing some things that, I think he's a first-round talent. We'll see. I'm sure I'll have more on Essentially Sports before the draft as I pinpoint it down. A lot of people like Brazel, but a lot of people don't like receivers coming out of that Tennessee system.
Yeah.
And there are some other issues. There may be some other issues there that I've got to nail down.
And it's this is not the time of year where you want to be like hearing things, right? Like we like anytime there's like these little questions around these guys, and like you said, he's obviously got a stink around him in terms in terms of stereotypes about Tennessee wide receivers and the fit, but he's one of those guys where it's like I just keep hearing people saying we're hearing things, and that's never good this time of year.
I mean, maybe, depends on who's saying it. And it also depends on exactly what the things are that you're hearing. Now, it's not broad brush. I mean, some people will hear certain things. Some teams will look at it and be more introspective about it. And it may be a red flag or concern for certain teams, or other teams will just brush it off their shoulder and they'll say it's not a big deal to us. Look at the size, look at the speed, look at the pass catching ability. Those other issues really don't matter to us. Which is why you got to boil it down before, or at least I got to boil it down before I start shooting my mouth off.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, we all need to. It's just it's not even so much I'm saying that about Brazil. It's just like in general,
Right.
there's like so many. This time of year, everybody starts talking in code about hearing things, right? And it not even you. It's just kind of it triggered me when you said that, and it's whether everybody's trying to get guys up the board, or everybody's trying at this point. Everybody's either throwing out uh like smoke screens, like just roadblocks, verbal roadblocks to try to throw people off the scent of what they're trying to do. It's this is the chess part of the game right now, right? This is we're not playing checkers anymore.
I wouldn't worry about what you hear now. I mean, the main stuff will come after draft meetings, final draft meetings, because final draft meetings, they'll have all their area scouts in one area since the combine. All the guys who went out and scouted the pro days did the interviews. Everybody was at the combine, and those meetings are intense. They last all
Oh yeah.
day. Exercise breaks sometimes in the middle of the
Yeah.
reduce the stress. I mean, there have been fisticuffs in those
DoorDash on call.
meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
There were fights, so that will kind of, I think, will give everybody a better view of at least what teams are thinking. Yeah, and listen, the draft is just the first piece. I mean, I focus on it year round. I get my grades up, do the reports, and everybody's a winner on draft day, while some people are losers. But it's just the beginning. What takes place after the draft is more important.
Let's talk about the draft board. Let's talk about the big board, Tony. You got another huge update up
Yeah.
on essentially sports. What are your overall takeaways from your latest deep dive here?
Well, I mean, just as far as the updates are concerned, 580 players that are graded. A few guys have, and I try and grade everybody that is a priority free agent or better, or at least I'll do a report on a priority free agent or better. Right now, there's 422 scouting reports that have been uploaded. All the Power Four conferences, all the non Power Four conferences, vast majority of the Division One AA guys, 99% of them. I still have some stragglers, some guys that were late ads to the combine, guys that I missed at the Shrine Bowl. So right now there's 422 scouting reports. I would suspect by draft day there's probably gonna be closer to 450. Now, what are the takeaways? I've got 12 players with round one grades, with surefire round one grades, which kind of goes into the narrative. And I'm not a narrative guy, but it fits in with the narrative that this is not a very strong draft at the top. You're usually looking for 18 to 24 players with first round grades. I only have 12. I think the consensus is it's going to be, people on the outside, it's going to be less than 15 players with first round grades. 94 players with day one or day two grades. I think there's 103 picks in the first, second, and third round. I only have 94 players with basically what would be top 100 grades, if you will, first or second day grades, and 264 players with draftable grades. I believe there's 255, 256 players selected in the draft. So I think it kind of lends to that belief that the draft is good in the middle rounds. It's weak at the top, and there could be more draftable players than there are draft picks.
For sure, for sure. In terms of risers, Mansoor Delane
Yeah.
kind of jumped out to me.
Well, I mean, the narrative, which has been wrongly fixed to Mansoor Delane literally since his days back at Virginia Tech, was he was not fast. And I never agreed with it, but I never got a solid 40 time on him. He was always a terrific cover man, going back to his sophomore season at Virginia Tech when I thought he was going to be a big time player. Had a knockout year at LSU, which basically put him in the top 15. Runs a 4.38 at Pro Day, which basically dismisses any false narrative that he's not fast. So he's got the speed. If you watched him last year at LSU, he was good in press. He was good in man. He was good in zone. He's a scheme versatile cornerback with good ball skills, and now we know the speed to play on Sunday. So he has jumped into the top 10. He went from 13 to number 6 because we finally have a 40-yard dash number on Mansoor Delane, and it's right up there with the elite cornerbacks.
4.34 officially on the board, right? And uh, stellar. Yeah, we talked about this already, but definitely, uh, definitely backed up your buzz. Let's put it, just specifically talking about your feelings on him. He gave you some numbers to back up the feeling, right?
Right, and I think when we get into the mock draft, we'll talk about it a little bit deeper. I think the Kansas City Chiefs have a big decision to make it at number 9, maybe even the Washington Commanders. But that's what Mansoor Delane has done for himself in laying down that 40 time at Pro Day.
Any other big takeaways from you from your latest updates?
Jarmod McCoy has jumped into the top 15 again. With McCoy, you watch the 2024 film. He's a big physical cornerback with solid ball skills. Needs a little detail work at the position. Did not play in 2025 because of a knee injury suffered in January of that year. I think he made the right decision. He probably could have played late in the year, but I think he made the right decision for himself. On Tuesday at Pro Day, he runs a 4.38, which tells you that the speed is back, the form is back. Maybe he's not in football shape yet as of right now, and he's got to get back to where he was in 2024. But again, he goes from number 19 on my board to number 14. Cornerbacks are a priority position come NFL draft time. Everybody talks about the quarterbacks. The media loves the quarterbacks. But if you talk to NFL scouts and you're in war rooms, it's left tackles, it's defensive tackles, and it's cornerbacks. Now it's also pass rushers. So cornerback is a priority position. And, unless we hear that there's an issue with those medicals on Jarmod McCoy's knee, and I haven't heard anything like that, the fact that if he gets towards the draft with clean medicals plus the 4.38, that's really going to help him. I think people will talk about who's the number 1 cornerback, Mansoor Delane or Jarmod McCoy. McCoy's got a slight side advantage over Delane, but I think Delane is more polished. He can play in a variety of systems. He doesn't have as many mental lapses. He's more complete. I think you can say, based on the size and the speed, Jarmod McCoy may be the better cornerback 2 or 3 years down the road, but Mansoor Delane, as far as I'm concerned, has much less downside risk.
And that's really what it's about, right? Is you want to project, you want to minimize your immediate risk in terms of them being the commodity and being seen as the winner coming out of the draft, but you also need to be building long term. So it's going to be interesting where a guy like that, where these teams come down on a guy like McCoy.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to miss on a top 20 pick.
Yeah.
You can gamble, but if you gamble, you're going to look back and say woulda, shoulda, coulda, and you don't want to do that. And I think when you compare the two, Delane and McCoy, McCoy's got the greater downside risk.
Nice. All right. Any other thoughts before we bring on our guest here, Tony?
Couple of sliders to talk about. Peter Woods has slid significantly on my
Yeah.
board,
Yeah.
18 to 30. I mean, he's the problem with Peter Woods is, he's a nice sized defensive tackle coming off of a poor season. And then we were told about, well, he's a good athlete. He's a good athlete. Clemson lined him up in the offensive backfield on a couple of occasions. Really didn't work out all that well. Didn't have top athletic numbers for a guy of his size. So that's a major red flag right there. You say, well, Peter Woods, like most of the Clemson players, did not have a good 2025 season, but he's big and he's athletic. Well, where are these athletic numbers? They weren't there.
Yeah.
Xavier Harris, who is a big athletic guy, or so we thought, went from 117 to 248 on my board. Why the significant drop? Well, I talked to Xavier Harris, and he told me outright that he was flagged at the combine for a foot issue, and the combine did not let him work out, would not let him participate in position drills or testing. And then he and his team made the decision to have the issue on his foot surgically repaired so he would be ready for camp. which basically means that Xavier Harris goes towards the draft process with no testing numbers, no position drills. And the fact is, he's a big guy, but he's been very inconsistent throughout his Mississippi career. He was not a consistent force. So he's dropped, as has Michael Trigg. Michael Trigg was a potential day 2 pick. He went from number 96 to number 247. Now, what happened there? Well, I spoke about it last draft cast. Michael Trigg has not done any testing except for vertical jump at his pro day, and he jumped 27 inches. And teams said, who were on hand, said he checked out. He didn't want to be there, and that matches the film with Michael Trigg. When Michael Trigg is focused and wants to play the Michael Trigg, I should say the tight end from Baylor, he is a force. He is a guy that is a playmaking tight end, but it's hit and miss, and it seems to be miss in the pre-draft process. He chose not to do any testing at the combine. He didn't run at the during his pro day because he said he had a hamstring issue or something like that. And the guys at the pro day are not medically checked out before they test. And again, as we've talked about, this is a huge job interview. And when your future employers want to see you run the 40, want to see you, do testing of this sort, and you refuse to, that's not going to sit well with them.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna pause here 1 second. Son's home today, and he's out on the basketball court. Hold on 1 second. All right, Tony, we've got our Kuiper. We've had our Kuiper in place. How do you feel about that in terms of me calling you Kuiper?
No,
You want to be
Mel,
Tony Pauline. Fair enough.
yeah, Mel's Mel. So
yeah.
Mel has taken a lot of grief over the years sometimes from me, and I don't always agree. I mean, with his takes, especially on quarterback, give him credit. He's a survivor. And
That's what I was just gonna say. You got to respect the hustle,
anybody,
right? Respect the survivor.
Is able to last as long as he did, especially with all the criticism, both in and outside of the league circles. He deserves a lot of credit.
No doubt, no doubt, and I say that only in reverence to you. You two are the Cadillac in terms of the what we all aspire to. We're building out a team here at ES. Check out the videos online. You'll see Luke Hubbard was with us in New York. We did a mock draft there. We have another member of the team now. He actually met Tony in 2025. They watched the combine together, and now we bring him on as part of our team. His name is Daniel Rios. You've seen some of his work already on Essentially Sports. Check out. We're starting to. You're gonna see us amp up. We're gonna be doing a lot of live broadcasts on YouTube and Twitter over the next few weeks. We tested out a live mock draft on April 2nd with Daniel and Luke, and now we bring Daniel Rios onto the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Like you guys talked about, just 2.5 weeks until the draft, pretty much, which is surreal in its own right. But yeah, I'm doing good today.
You said it yesterday. You said it Thursday, like Christmas. This is Christmas. This
Yep.
is birthdays. This is everything. Wedding, birth of the first baby, all of it. This is the sort of thing, the sort of feeling we get around the draft.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Like I mentioned yesterday, it's where every NFL fan base has hope, and it's NFL's done a great job in growing this event the past couple years, and it's going to be an event in Pittsburgh, and excited to see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. So we have the latest Tony Pauline mock draft up on Essentially Sports, a 2-round mock draft this time. On top of all the other stuff that Tony is doing for us this week, he's got his latest mock draft, and we've got Daniel on to help break it down a little bit. So Tony, shocker at number 1. You've got. We still got Mendoza. You haven't bought the bait on Ty Simpson, moving him to the number 1 slot, thankfully.
No, and somewhat, algorithms be damned. I wake up, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, and on my phone to find out that the Jets made a huge trade, number 1, to get Fernando Mendoza. And I mean, it's just the shock value, it gets it's comical at times. So yeah, the Jets aren't trading. I shouldn't say the Jets aren't trading number one. The Raiders aren't trading out of number one, and Ty Simpson is not going ahead of Fernando Mendoza. As I said, short of Fernando Mendoza's arm falling off.
I mean, yes, April Fools this year was, just like a treasure trove for all of these fake Twitter accounts out there. They just, so it was like I almost just wanted to stay off on April Fools this year because but some of the stuff was really comical. All right, so first big decision, Arvell Reese with the Jets.
Yeah, if people think David Bailey, I just can't see that. The Jets have expended a lot of early draft capital. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, who's no longer on the team, on pass rushers. Prior to Aaron Glenn getting there, they made some pass rushing signings in the offseason. They still need a dominant linebacker. I know they signed Demario Davis in the offseason, as I had reported they would at the combine. Demario Davis is 37 years old. Arvell Reese is one of the most complete linebackers to enter the draft in a long, long time. Is he a pass rusher? Is he an off-ball linebacker? He's all those things lined up in one, rolled up in one, I should say. And you go back to the '80s, the Lawrence Taylors, Carl Banks. He's not Lawrence Taylor, but he's that type of player. And the fact that he's a three-down linebacker that you can put on the field in any certain instance or circumstance, and he's only going to get better.
Daniel, I took Reese, in mock draft live. You didn't hate on that too much. Are you good with Reese at two?
Yeah, I kind of wrote about it a little bit in my first article. It just kind of makes sense. It makes too much sense. I think people forget the type of athletic freak he is because Sonny Styles just took over the combine, but Arvell Reese was right there with him the entire way throughout the drills and everything like that. But you just kind of look, and I look at it in the scheme of the Jets. You're going to switch to that 3-4 this season, and he has the versatility to be that linebacker, to be that edge rusher if they want to go in the even and odd fronts, whatever they want to do. I think it just gives Aaron Glenn that chess piece he's really been missing on the defensive side of the ball, and just fits perfectly with what I assume Glenn wants to accomplish this season.
Tony, you're going defense right through the fifth pick. You got Bailey going to the Cardinals at 3. David Bailey. We've got Ruben Bain Jr. going to the Titans at 4, and Sonny Styles, the aforementioned Styles, going to the Giants at 5.
Excuse me. There's a lot of conversations what the Cardinals are going to do at 3. I can't see them taking a right tackle there. Marioga, it's just too much of a reach, and Bailey is so much higher rated. Then there's talk about the Tennessee Titans and taking Jeremiyah Love. Never bought into that. You look at Robert Saleh, the new head coach there. When he was with the Jets, it was primarily defensive players, pass rushers like Will McDonald, even when he didn't need them. Bogdanovich, who's a general manager, comes over from Kansas City. They had success with late round running backs like Isaiah Pacheco. I like Jeremiyah Love a lot. He's my second rated player on the board, but they also need defense. The Giants are interesting. Does Harbaugh push for the running back, and Harbaugh is making the decisions there? I think when all is said and done, they have some good running backs on the roster already. They could get another decent running back later on in the draft. I think he goes and really fortifies the defense even further with Sonny Styles.
It's shocking to me to see, how these mock drafts play out, and we've got our best players on the board, right? And obviously, Caleb Downs wasn't going to be a fit for the Jets at 2 once they made some moves there. But any thoughts from you, Daniel? Obviously, we love these players, and but any thoughts from you on 3 through 5 here?
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals pick to me is the hardest one to predict throughout this
I
entire
agree.
draft. I mean, I'm a big believer that they should trade down in this spot, but like the conversation I keep coming back to is who's going to trade up and for who? Because at the top of this draft, it's positional value. When you kind of look at it, are you going to trade up for David Bailey? Are you going to trade up for a guy like Sonny Styles who's a linebacker? Like I just don't see a team trading up to 3, giving up capital to take a linebacker or running back or whatever. And when you look at the top prospects in this class, and Noah, David Bailey, even Spencer Fano, there's a lot of red flags within all those prospects. Ruben Bain too. I'm a big believer in Ruben Bain, but the arm length is a concern for NFL teams, and it rightfully should be. Spencer Fano's arm length. He's a good athlete, but again, shorter arms. So there's a lot of conversations when you get to the top. In terms of 3 through 5, I mean, I've seen so many mock drafts. I've done so many mock drafts myself. I can see it playing out how Tony has it. I think Jeremiyah Love goes 5 or top 5. I may buy into the hype for the Titans or Giants. I just feel like he's too good of a prospect, and I have him up there with not better, but right in that same category as like a Bijan Robinson or a Barkley.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Because we've been talking about defense, especially edge and off ball linebacker being the stars of this class, and it's good. It's going to be interesting to see if these war rooms can stick to quality and value, or if they just get caught up in the buzz and get caught up in the mindset of, oh, we can't let it go too long before somebody's taking offense here.
They won't get caught up in the buzz. I mean, the buzz means nothing. They are the ones that create the buzz when stuff leaks out. But it's just a matter of, if you're the Giants, you've got some decent ball carriers on the depth chart. Does Harbaugh say, do we add Jeremiyah Love, who's head and shoulders better than him? There's no doubt about it. Or do we continue to build that offense, that defense, which was atrocious last year, especially against the run, and add a guy like Sonny Styles? I think that's what the interesting conversation is.
The thought for me there with the Giants was, how far are we going to let the number 2 guy on the big board slide? And Harbaugh loves loves his secondary guys, and how can he look away from Caleb Downs there?
Well, I would agree with Caleb Downs. The only problem is they gave Javon Holland a huge contract,
Yep.
free agent contract last year, and then they also drafted Tyler Newman in 2024, who's a good player. I would absolutely believe that Caleb Downs has got to be in the mix. They signed Greg Newsome this year as a free agent. Holland's contract was pretty high, pretty huge. They don't have a lot of depth at the safety position. So, yeah, listen, Baltimore Ravens had so much success all those years with Ed Reed.
Oh yeah,
So why not bring in
Kyle
Caleb Downs?
Hamilton. Yeah, I mean, so it's he's he's got an affinity for those type of players, and not just for the position itself, but the leadership. Finding that leader of the defense at that position. So, but again, I mean, you can't argue. I can't argue these first 5 picks. It makes sense all the way around. 6 through 10, you've got Spencer Fano going to the Browns. You've got Love going to the Commanders, which again, we were talking defense with Quinn, and if Styles fell there, he'd be doing jumping high fives and happy dances in the war room. We don't have him falling here, so Love is the pick at 7 for the Commanders. Kenyon Sadiq back in the mix of the top 10 at 8 for the Saints. You mentioned the Chiefs earlier and which way they were going. You've got them going tackle. You've got them going protection at 9, and best guy on the board with Francis Mayoga. And then Caleb Downs falls to 10 in this scenario to the Bengals, which, again, they're doing happy dances. Overall thoughts on 6 through 10 from you, Tony?
I mean, the Cleveland Browns, if you read my article earlier this week, they would be interested in trading down a few slots if they can. They're kind of in no man's land. They want a left tackle. Is Caleb, and they are pretty convinced that Caleb Fano Spencer Fano, I should say, can play left tackle on Sunday, despite the arms that are, an eighth of an inch shorter than what they're supposed to be for a left tackle. As somebody pointed out to me, Joe Thomas didn't have 33-inch arms. But they definitely want a left tackle because they need tackles and they need receivers. They're kind of in no man's land at number 6, which is why they would like to trade down a few slots. You can't take a receiver at 6. You can, but it's going to be a reach. And Fano's probably a bit of a reach himself at number 6. But I don't do trades in my mock draft, so that's why I went with Fano. The Commanders, I mean, if Jeremiyah Love is not there, it probably means Sonny Styles is there, which would be the pick, but they've gone running back by committee for a number of years. You want to help Jaden Daniels, get him a consistent force at running game. I do think Mansoor Delane would be has to be in the conversation here. Probably caught a lot of people by surprise with Kenyon Sadiq, but as I said in my write-up, you know what? Colston Loveland was the number 10 pick last year to the Chicago Bears. Tyler Warren was what, the number 16 pick to the Indianapolis Colts? Kenyon Sadiq grades higher than both of those players, both of those tight ends, much higher than those tight ends. And if you remember, Colston Loveland had a shoulder issue prior to the 2025 draft, never
Yep.
tested. The
Yep.
New Orleans Saints need weapons. They need receivers. They need weapons. And that's what Kenyon Sadiq is. He is a weapon. He is a guy who was playing outstanding football at the end of 2025, much better than he started the season, showed great development, and he had an Olympic type workout at the combine. So, and he's got great potential, great upside. We saw what Brock Bowers did for the Raiders, and Brock Bowers, is not the athlete of Kenyon Sadiq. Kansas City Chiefs, I know they want offensive line. I think the big conversation for the Chiefs, do we go Francis Maliaga or do we take a Mansoor Delane with this pick because their secondary has been decimated in the preseason, during free agency, trade away McDuffie. They had some losses, some guys who signed away, so there's a big hole there. But still, your franchise is Patrick Mahomes. You better be able to protect him. They have a gaping hole at right tackle, which is why I went Maliaga.
So in the we've been talking all along. You've been talking. I've been cheering you on in terms of the Sadiq window being 8 to 11, right? And the talk had kind of moved away. Saw him slipping down some mock drafts. So I love Sadiq at 8 for the Saints. The other thing that strikes me here, Daniel, is in this scenario, the Cincinnati Bengals are all in on defense, all in on the free agent market, and now they get a stud. They get the number 2 guy on most boards, most big boards, at 10 here.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals need defense. We've all talked about it. Corner isn't, I would say, as pressing of a need for them, but I think safety definitely is like the more pressing need for them. And you look at it, Downs' eyes, his ability just to stay so disciplined in the back end, it just jumped out to me. Like I mentioned yesterday, he's been dominating since he was a freshman at Alabama in college football. I feel like there's just a little bit of prospect fatigue with him, and I hate to use that word, but I just feel like people have gotten like a little bit bored about talking about him. Like he's a plus talent, and I think he helps out the Bengals just tremendously and gives them a real leader on that back end that they've truly just been looking for the entire time that they've had, Joe Burrow.
Any other thoughts here, 6 through 10, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it's interesting what Tony was saying with, the Browns wanting to trade down. I think it makes a lot of sense with if they want to go tackle with that first pick. And if Jeremiyah Love falls out of the top 5, like, is there a team that comes calling up for him? I think it's unlikely, but I mean, maybe they get some interest there. Obviously, still 3 weeks to go, 2.5 weeks to go. Maybe interest gains, but I think that they're a real possibility to fall out. And I like how there's no receiver either getting taken here because I think that's also a very real possibility here. I think Jordan Tyson for me would have been a top 10 talent if the injuries weren't a thing because I think he's an elite separator. He's amazing after the catch. I think he's a top 5, top 10 talent. Just, you're not going to take an injured player in the top 10. And then Sadiq's also another interesting pick because I mean, Brock Bowers went 13. Last year, we obviously saw Loveland and Warren where they went, and he's a better athlete than all of them. So I think top 10 hype is definitely realistic. I think for the Saints, it just comes down to, honestly, Tate or Sadiq at that, number 8 selection.
11, we've talked a lot about him. Moved up your big board, has had a phenomenal interview season, so to speak. Mansoor Delane at 11 for the Dolphins. 12, you've got the aforementioned Jarmod McCoy going to the Cowboys. 13, Mekhi Lemon Our first wide receiver off the board going to the Rams. 14, Vega. Ianoa. I'm. What's how do we pronounce his last name? I got to get this right.
Iwane, Iwane.
Owane. All right, Vega
Yeah.
at 14, 15. TJ Parker from Clemson. Uh, you know, this pick intrigues me. Give me your thoughts overall on 11 through 15, Tony.
If it's not Mansoor Delane, it'll be Mawioga for the Dolphins. I mean, they have so many holes. They need a right tackle. They need cornerbacks. Uh, they need a lot of help. They could use another pass rusher, despite all the early draft picks that they've used on pass rushers. But I think with Delane, they get value and they fill a need at 11. McCoy, we talked about at the top of the show. He's going to go very early. The Dallas Cowboys, we've seen in the past, they're not afraid to take chances on injured players, and they need they've got a gaping hole at cornerback. The Rams, I went with Lemon because he's a better scheme fit. As I said, Carnell Tate is my higher rated receiver, but right now it looks like they're going to keep Devontae Adams on the roster. Nakua is having some off the field issues. I mean, Lemon, he's a hometown guy. He runs great routes. He's not super fast, but he's a tough, feisty, competitive receiver who wants the football. I think with the Rams, they're picking 13th because they're not a bad team. They're picking 13th because of that great trade with Atlanta last year. So
Yes.
they have the luxury of taking not only filling a need, but filling a need with a player that fits their scheme. And I think that Lemon is a better scheme fit. Ione, I mean, the Ravens could use another edge rusher, despite the fact they took Max Crosby. They signed Trey Hendrickson after they nixed the trade for Max Crosby. They could use another receiver, but again, I mean, your franchise is wrapped up there in the quarterback, Lamar Jackson. You better be able to protect him. They need help on the inside of that offensive line. They need a center, but there's no centers worth taking until the third round. So they improve the interior of the offensive line with Ione. And TJ Parker, I'm sorry, TJ Parker, to your point, a lot of people don't have TJ Parker going in the top 30, but I look at his game. I look at the system fit. I look at what Todd Bowles likes. He likes those explosive, undersized pass rushers. Parker didn't have the season he expected. Nobody from Clemson had the season they expected. But when you watch the film, it wasn't due to lack of effort. He wasn't taking downs off. And then we went to the Senior Bowl. You saw that explosion. You saw that quickness. You saw some strength in his game and ability to rush the edge. I think that'll overcome the deficiencies we saw in 2025. And if you go back to 2024 film, TJ Parker was a game wrecker.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at Clemson as a bag of bruised apples right now, right? And to me, Parker is the most reliable and still ripest of the bruised apples among this Clemson bunch. I have no problem with Parker at 15. Yeah, like you said, I know a lot of folks have all the Clemson guys slipping out, most of the Clemson guys slipping out. But in terms of scheme fit, in terms of personality fit with Bowles, great fit here. A lot of talk about McCoy at 15 right now. Um, I don't. I'm with you. I don't see him slipping that far, but I think at 15, that's a great pick. Daniel, overall thoughts? A lot of lineup in terms of what you've been talking about, what we talked about on the live mock draft show, especially when it comes to Lemon.
Yeah, and I want to hit on Parker real quick too, because that definitely caught my eye. I'm a big believer in guys who play with power out on the edge. Those are the guys who typically translate into the NFL, and Parker definitely has it. We all think back to that Senior Bowl clip, just throws an offensive tackle down with one arm. That's the type of strength that you want. And just to hit on the Woods and the Parker just kind of debacle of this entire draft process is they both didn't have a good 25. But obviously, you look at 24, and I think back to the Pitt game for Parker, he wasn't just an absolute game wrecker. But you look at this process, Parker came out and tested. He's tested. He's done what has been asked of him. He's dominated at the Senior Bowl, and he showed us that he's still that dominant guy, and he's a guy who can just be powerful on the edge. Woods has skipped out on the Senior Bowl, skipped out on the combine, and he weighed in under 300 pounds at the combine. So it's just kind of like what, like, you're supposed to be this freak athlete, so let's, like, show us, that you're still that dominant defensive tackle, and he hasn't. That's why I feel like he slips. But just Parker, I think he is a scheme fit. I like Zion Young a lot. At this spot, I'm a big Zion Young guy. But I just don't think the Bucks would take him here. And then in terms of Lemon, an interesting. I know he's gone here, but an interesting fit too. It would be Sadiq here at 13. We all know Sean McVay loves his 13 personnel from last season, but I mean Tony hit on it. I think Lemon's a really good fit here. That slot guy who's just not. He is not scared at all going in the middle of the field. The amount of catches he had this season, taking hits immediately right after, separates just magically every single time. And I honestly thought he was a pretty good run blocker too while watching him. Definitely gives effort in that regard, and I know Sean McVay would love that as well. And then, in terms of the rest of the picks, nothing too surprising. And, with the Dolphins, honestly, anywhere they go is fine.
14 with the Ravens fascinates me. I feel like it's a situation if Sadiq was to slip there, um, with likely gone, with Andrews aging, and Jackson liking those security blanket type guys. Uh, if Sadiq was to fall there, I like Sadiq at 14. I know they have bigger needs. I know, but the way this mock has played out, I mean, I love that for them at 14. All right, so 16 through 20, we've got Carnell Tate going to the Jets, the pick they got via the Colts and the Sauce Gardner trade. Caden Proctor going to the Lions at 17. Keldrick Falk going to the Vikings at 18. Jordan Tyson going to the Panthers at 19. And Monroe Freeling, the tackle, going to the Cowboys via Green Bay and the Parsons deal going to the Cowboys at 20. Tony, overall thoughts on 16 through 20 for you?
With the Jets, I'd like to put a cornerback there, but there's really the top two cornerbacks are off the board. The Jets need a lot of help at a lot of different areas. Some of the wounds are self-inflicted. They need another receiver. You get Carnell Tate to pair up with Garrett Wilson, two Buckeyes there. I think it just adds another player for the offense. Caden Proctor, there's been some talk about Caden Proctor going potentially top 10. I'm not buying into it, but Caden Proctor is a good left tackle who can also play right tackle on Sunday. The Lions, they released the Taylor Decker upon his own request. There's talk that they may move Penei Sewell to left tackle, and Penei Sewell was a terrific left tackle at Oregon before they moved him over to right tackle. I think you got two interchangeable tackles there who are both good run blockers. And again, if you read my piece on Essentially Sports earlier this week about the offensive lineman, the Lions hope to sign Jahmyr Gibbs to an extension. They want to run the ball. Caden Proctor helps in them and fostering them run the ball. Keldrick Falk, some people will look at this as a bit of a reach, especially off his 2025 film. He's a terrific athlete. He's explosive. He was dominant 2024. I think Brian Flores is going to have a large voice in that Minnesota Vikings war room. He wants more pass rushers. Yeah, they need help in the secondary, but he feels more pass rushers will ease any deficiencies in the secondary. The Panthers just did a phenomenal job in free agency, as we've spoken about in previous DraftCast episodes. They filled needs, so now they basically have the luxury of going elsewhere. And what do? They bring in another receiver who, when he's healthy, pair him up with Ted McMillan. Watch out. That can be a dynamic duel, but Tyson's got to stay healthy. The Cowboys, this may be an area where they trade down. If a teams are basically believe that the Steelers are in it for Ty Simpson, they can move up to the Cowboy spot and the Cowboys move down. I wanted to put a linebacker there. I wanted to maybe consider an edge rusher, but the fact is they still need help on that offensive line, despite all the early draft capital they used. Tyler Guyton has never lived up to expectations. He's been injured. Monroe Freeling is, in my opinion, sort of a work in process. He's not a week one starter, but if you hit on him, you could have a terrific left tackle moving forward.
Daniel, thoughts on 16 to 20 here?
Yeah, for the Jets and Lions makes sense. I'm pretty high on Proctor. I think his feet were really excellent throughout his film. Just needs to work on some, technical issues when handling, those stronger pass rushers. But Falk's definitely interesting to me. I'm not one of those guys who thinks it's too early for him. Like I said, I'm usually higher on pass rushers who play with power, and he has very disciplined hands in the run game, heavy hands. And you just look at it like he already has a good floor in the NFL just because of his run stopping ability. I just think it's going to be hard if Dillon Thieneman's there for me. I just think it's going to be hard for Flores and that front office to pass. But like you said, pass rush helps secondary issues, and this is a deep safety class as well. They'd easily hit on that later. And the Panthers, I don't think anyone's truly done a better job this offseason than them. You've hit on it. I mean, to fill the needs that they had to now put you in this position just to go make that offense better. Ted McMillan, Jordan Tyson, and Jalen Coker next year for Bryce Young would just be an absolute offensive trio that he can rely on. And there's just no more excuses for Bryce Young. Next year if he's not
Yeah,
able
you
to,
nailed it. You nailed
you
it.
know,
Like
to
if this plays out, with Tyson, it is the no excuse year. It is the definitive pooper get off the pot year for one Young.
Yeah, because I know Ekem is got hurt late last season, but the signing of Rasheed Walker was just excellent from them. The fact that they were able to get him at that cheap deal, and then Monroe Freeling is definitely an interesting pick here. I can see the left tackle need. Obviously, Guyton has not lived up to what he needs to be. Obviously, he got it coming out of the combine. Everyone was talking about him in the top 10. That was always a little too rich for me. I mean, I watched his tape. He's just an incredible athlete, and he tested like that. There's just so many technical issues with his bend, his ability to anchor, his hand usage. There's a lot, but I can see why a team would fall in love with the athlete, and I think around 20 is a perfectly reasonable, kind of swing to take here on a player like that.
21 through 26, things get interesting. Tony mentioned Simpson. We've been talking Ty Simpson, tape versus traits. Pittsburgh, it is. If we're not talking Cleveland, if we're not talking the Jets at 16, Simpson going to the Steelers in Tony's mock draft. Ty Simpson going to the Steelers at 21 makes the most sense. Avian Terrell, younger brother of AJ, going to the Chargers at 22. Eagles going Cassius Howell, edge from Texas A&M at 23. Casey Concepcion, wide receiver, going to the Browns at 24. The aforementioned Dillon Thieneman going to the Bears at 25 at safety. And then 26, the guy I think we all love and want to try to fit in somewhere earlier. But boy, if CJ Allen falls to the Bills at 26, they are happy campers. Tony, give me your overall thoughts on 21 through 26 here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a debate whether Ty Simpson's going to end up as a first round pick. There's no debate in my mind. He's going to be a first round pick. It's just a matter of where. Mike McCarthy's there. I think he wants to develop a young quarterback. The sleeper pick for 21 for the Steelers that I'm hearing could be C.J. Allen. Harbaugh needs cornerbacks out in L.A. with the Chargers. Cassius Howell is a perfect fit for the Eagles defense, a small, undersized, fierce edge rusher. Casey Concepcion to the Browns. The Browns, like they need 2 or 3 offensive linemen, need 2 or 3 receivers. Concepcion, he's a great route runner. I would really suggest people go back and see our interview with Malik Muhammad because he gave a great breakdown on Concepcion.
Absolutely. Great
Takes the
point.
top off the defense and is also brings impact as a return specialist. Dillon Thieneman, I mean, it's just you look at the Bears' history. They have a need there, and it's a natural fit if he's still available. And the Bills can go in a variety of ways. They can add another receiver, they can add another offensive lineman, but they had some losses in free agency at the linebacker position. I think people are underrating C.J. Allen. I think he's a tremendous off-ball linebacker who struggled late in the year with a knee injury, which he had surgery on, yet he still performed the combine. He still performed the pro day.
Daniel, thoughts on 21 through
Yeah,
26?
yeah, and it's interesting with the Ty Simpson stuff. Obviously, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about that yesterday. I think the 20s it's going to be a Jackson Dart situation from last year. He's going to go in this late first round. Maybe a team trades up coming in from that second round, or maybe it is the Steelers here. Because, I mean, what are we, in April and we have no word on Aaron Rodgers yet? Like, it's just like, you can't just sit here and go into the season like Will Howard's going to be our guy. I just don't see a world where that's going to happen. So, I mean, if obviously the front office realistically knows more than us, if they believe Rodgers comes back, I can see them passing here. But I mean, they need a quarterback, and the Steelers roster is one of those rosters where honestly, there's not a lot of pressing needs to where a quarterback realistically, can work here. Chargers with Terrell, guy who can play inside and out, and outside corner is a real need for them. They have still in the Tariq Steele in the nickel, and then obviously you got Derwin James back there, but they realistically do need another corner, and Terrell's a guy who easily can fit in. Definitely smaller, but I mean, when you watch his tape, I mean, he's not scared to hit at all and come down and make plays. He does not play at his size, so like that fit. And then Cassius Howell, a guy who I think first round's a little rich for me just because of his size, but the Eagles do take chances on players like this, so I could see it happening. He's really explosive off the edge. I just think when he goes up against those bigger offensive linemen in the league, I feel like he can struggle a little bit. But Eagles take chances, and we'll have to see what happens there. But in terms of the last three, I mean, I love C.J. Allen to the Bills. I think we mocked that yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Dillon Thieneman to the Bears. Safety is such a huge need for them. Zion Young is where I think is a real possibility to go here. I think I mocked him there yesterday, but if Thieneman's on the board at 25, I think it's hard for them to pass on him there. And then Casey Concepcion. I mean, he is such an elite route runner. I think back to the Notre Dame game. I watched. I don't know if it was Christian Gray or I doubt it was Leonard Moore, but he put one of their corners in an absolute blender. And I think back to that clip a lot. He is just an elite separator. I have Omar Cooper higher than him, but I would not fault a team for taking him in the first round.
Concepcion is been a low buzz guy up to this point, but you talk to folks around the league, you talk to scouts, you talk to evaluators, and he's kind of one of those guys that a lot of these war rooms kind of
Yeah.
don't want to talk about, right? They want to keep the buzz low on him, but when you actually kind of almost a situation, Tony, hypothetically, if you were to get a couple beers in some of these guys and get them to actually, the truth serum starts to come out. Concepcion is a guy that a lot of people are higher than they're letting on to this point about.
I don't gotta listen. I don't have to talk to them. We talked to Malik Muhammad, who played against them, and Malik
Yes.
Muhammad was
Well, great point.
the scoop on him, which I was very happy with because it confirmed my feelings looking on the outside in for Casey Concepcion, a guy I've always had
Great
highly
point.
rated.
Great point. Great point. 27 through 32, we've got Akeem Mesidor sitting there for the 49ers at 27. How do you not do that? 28, interesting. Makes me cry a little bit if this is how it plays out. Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, Ohio State to the Texans at 28. 29, the Chiefs take the pick they got from the Rams and go Omar Cooper here, wide receiver from Indiana. 30, aforementioned Zion Young, Dolphins giddy to take the DN from Missouri at 30. Max Ionikor falls to, well, not falls, but falls in the lap of the Patriots at 31. Interesting pick there, given all the crap they've kind of taken about Will Campbell this year. But they go there at 31, and Daniel, having seen him a lot, being an Arizona State guy, will have something to say there, I'm sure. 32, you got Colton Hood with the Seahawks. Tony, give me your thoughts just on the back end of this first round.
I am not as high in Mesidor as a lot of other people. I like him. I liked him coming into the season. I think he was underrated coming into the season. I think he's a bit overrated now. 6'3", 259 pounds. Didn't run the 40. Did very minimal testing before at Combine and Pro Day. He's not going to do it. And I think there's a reason why he's not going to do it, because scouts basically projected him as a 4.8 40 guy. A real good player. I like him, but I think he benefited from the talent around him. And I really don't feel he's a first round prospect, although he'll probably end up in the first round. Texans, Cade McDonald, they need help on the inside. They've got a defensive coordinator or defensive minded head coach. The Chiefs with Omar Cooper, a lot of early on in the process, a lot of people thought the Chiefs would go take a receiver with that first pick, the ninth pick. But they need some dependable field stretchers. Cooper fits that scheme. The Dolphins fill the need at edge rusher with Zion Young. Max Ioannakor is a guy I absolutely love. In fact, I've said it and I'll say it again. I do believe that 2 or 3 years down the road, he will be the best offensive lineman to come out of this year's draft. He's just a little bit raw, doesn't have a great big body of work, but he is a fantastic offensive lineman, has been for a couple of years now. They've got to get ready to move on from Morgan Moses, who's getting up there in years. He's been a terrific player for them, but they can't depend on him moving forward, especially with a young quarterback like Drake May and Colton Hood. I mean, listen, we'll see if the Seahawks stay with that pick at the bottom of round 1, but they have a history of taking big, athletic, explosive cornerbacks and mining gold with them, and I think they can do the same thing with Colton Hood.
Daniel, thoughts on 27 through 32 here?
Yeah, I'm kind of happy you hit on the Mesidor point because I watched his tape, and obviously you kind of go in with kind of knowing what's the consensus thought, and I was a little bit lower on him than I felt like a lot of people are. He's an excellent pass rusher. There's no doubt about that. Can really win and get to the quarterback. I just felt like his run defense was just a little bit lackluster, and his hands sometimes would be a little inconsistent. Not saying that he's not worth the first round pick. Obviously, we'll see what happens there, but a little bit older.
So,
Sorry.
no problem. Tony mentioned in his mock draft that Peter Woods was considered to 27. You had Peter Woods going 28 in the live mock draft to the Texans.
Yeah, with that, there's realistically one team I'd understand would take Woods in the first round, and that's the Texans, just because of their attacking style up front, and then they have the two dominant edges on the outside, where he can really win on the inside. I just feel like the 49ers have spent a lot of draft capital, on that front, defensive line. They took CJ West last year, they took Alfred Collins last year. I feel like it'd be hard to add another guy into that room, but I mean, defensive tackle is definitely a need there as well. I mean, along with the defensive line, they obviously have Nick Bosa, but they just kind of need depth there. So I mean, I could see it happening, but I would, I think Caden McDonald there as well at 28 he's just an A-plus run defender. He's going to be a starter in this league for 10 to 12 years, just based on his inability to be moved off the line of scrimmage. He is just watching him all throughout the season. There's no real pass rush upside there. That's why he's not going to go in the top 10, top 15, but he is just an absolute unit on that 0-1 technique kind of player, and he's just going to be a run stopper for his entire career, and that's not a bad shout. When you kind of look at the back half, honestly, nothing really surprises me. I'm a big Omar Cooper guy. Talked about that yesterday. Zion Young as well, I've already mentioned today. The Dolphins need legit everything, so honestly, wherever they go with their first 2 picks would make sense. You can make an argument for either. And Max Ioannakor, the tackle out of Arizona State, the athleticism that he has within his game and how polished he looks already as a guy who's barely played football. Like, you saw Mike Vrabel working with him at Arizona State's pro day. Morgan Moses is getting up there in age. You sit him for a year, and we all know Moses will likely get hurt this season, so he can step in. Like, this is a guy who, I would agree with Tony. 3 years down the line, he could be the best tackle out of this class. He's probably going to end up as the 3rd or 4th offensive tackle for me when it's all said and done, but I would take a bet on the traits. He's a guy who I would, bet on more than Monroe Freeling. I thought his tape was more consistent. I thought his tape was more, just fine-tuned than when you look at Freeling. And the Colton Hood, I mean, we did it yesterday. I wanted him at 32 for the Seahawks. I went with Brandon Cisse, but I think the Seahawks team really needs a cornerback on that outside. And Hood's a guy whose eyes are very disciplined, and he comes downhill really well on some passes. And he's a guy who is physical, and that's exactly what Mike McDonald wants in his defense.
All right, so we're going to direct everybody to go to EssentiallySports.com and check out Tony, the second round for Tony. But I do want to go through some names that dropped out of the first round in your mock, or that aren't in the first round in your mock, that you know are jumping off the page. You've got Woods going to 33. Let's hypothetically, Tony, Simpson isn't taken by the Steelers. Do you think the Jets would take him at 33 if he fell to him?
Yeah, I think they jump all over him. I mean, people keep talking about, wow, they get their quarterback in 2027, as we've talked about before. People who put off taking a quarterback or even a position a year later or in the following year's draft, end up looking foolish. The 2027 draft was actually supposed to happen this year with Arch Manning, with Lenora Sellers, with Cade Klubnik. So you got to be careful about that. And as I've said in other interviews, if you're Aaron Glenn and the season hasn't started, and your job is already in jeopardy, or at least the perception is your job is in jeopardy, one way you kind of, push back on that is you draft a guy like Ty Simpson. And even if you win 5 or 6 games during the season, yet Ty Simpson plays good football in November and December, you've got some job security because there's something to look forward to. So I think the Jets would absolutely jump over Ty Simpson rather than this, what I believe is a ridiculous narrative that we'll get our quarterback in 2027 when you don't even really know who the coach is going to be in 2027.
The other things that jump off the page for me here is we mentioned Chris Brazell. You've got him going to the Titans, staying in Tennessee at 35. If that's the case, they're really building some legit weapons to take Cam Ward to the next level there under Brian Daboll. You got Denzel Boston going to the Giants at 37. Emmanuel Pregnon going to the Texans at 38. Emmanuel McNeil Warren going to the Giants at 43, the safety from Toledo. And then another guy that's,
The Dolphins, 43.
excuse
The
me, the
Dolphins
Dolphins.
at
Yes,
43.
thank you. 43 to the Dolphins. Thank you. And then another guy that's gotten a lot of, two guys really, that's gotten a fair amount of first round buzz. Anthony Hill Jr. You've got going at 41, Texas linebacker. You got going to the Bengals at 41, and you've got Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker from Texas Tech, going to the Buccaneers at 46. How? A lot of buzz around so many of these guys. There's only 32 slots to fill them in the first round, right? So, um, tell me your thoughts on some of these guys and why they were the best fits for you there.
I like Anthony Hill. I do think he could be a first round pick. But as you said, when you get to the bottom of the first round and you're looking at some of the teams, their needs, and you stack it up against your board or what you're hearing, eventually they're going to be players that, fall down the draft board. I think one of the toughest guys I couldn't find a place for was Caleb Lemieux, who some people think is a first round pick, the offensive tackle from Utah. I don't think he's a first round prospect, but I think he should be off the board within the first 10 to 12 picks of round two. I just couldn't find a fit for him, especially when you consider the needs of the other teams that were selecting before the Packers and the best player on the board. So, yeah, I mean, we talked with Drew Fabricant, who runs the Senior Bowl. And I remember, Drew was talking about how area scouts can be some of the worst people to talk to because they always have second or third round grades on guys. And to your point about only 32 picks, I mean, if you talk to the number of people as to who is going to go in the first round, there's probably 50 different players that are going to go in the first round, although there's only 32 selections. So when you actually do it and you stack it up and you look at team needs and you try and stay true to your board, a guy like an Anthony Hill Jr. or a Jacob Rodriguez or somebody else, I mean, there could be other people have other opinions. Players are going to fall out of the first round.
I guess the one other one, you mentioned his name before, Daniel. The one other one for me was Brandon Cisse at 56 to the if he falls to the Jaguars. Now again, being in the region. They've had a lot of eyeballs on him throughout his career at South Carolina. If he was ever to fall to them at 56, again, another home run for them, I think. What are your
My problem,
overall?
let me say
Go
this.
ahead.
My problem with Cisse is this, and we talked about this
Yep.
the last podcast. Is Cisse is very raw. He's very
Yep.
undeveloped. He was described as this big, physical, incredibly athletic cornerback who was still learning the position. And I kind of bought into that when I saw the film because I saw a guy who would physically beat down receivers to defend throws. But I also saw a guy who barely never got his head back around to track the pass in the air. And he was constantly face guarding. Then he goes to the combine. He's under 6 foot tall. He's under 200 pounds. Then he goes to his pro day and he runs between 4.42 to 4.46. Now, those aren't bad times, but they're not elite times for a cornerback, and the size is not an elite size for a cornerback. So it's not like we're talking about a 6'2", 200-pound cornerback who runs in the 4.3s. Yeah, Tariq Woolen, for example. We're not talking about that type of
Yep.
cornerback. We're talking about a cornerback with average size, average speed, who needs a lot of work on his game. And as far as I'm concerned, as a rookie, he's going to have to play in a system where he's facing the action in his own type system. So that's why I had Cisse falling as far as I did.
Oh, it's not that I don't agree with you. He is like this big, gorgeous clump of soft red clay, but it's clay. At the end of the day, it's still clay. It's not ready to be put in for fire yet. In terms of, he's just this big clump of clay. And listen, teams are gonna turn that to a positive, right? The team that takes him is gonna turn that to a positive and feel like they can. Daniel, overall thoughts when you take a look at who fell where into round two.
Yeah, just to hit on Cisse, again, real quick. I mean, it's very fair. I think the one team, like I said with Woods, who I'd be comfortable taking him in the first round is the Seahawks, just because of what their culture is and how he can kind of fit into that team. But he's definitely a project. You guys are not wrong. Like, there's a lot of times where he gets too handsy, he gets not too fast coming downhill. Just a lot of things that I kind of felt like were workable there. But in terms of the second round, I mean, there are so many guys who are going to fall that you think should have gone in the first round, should have gone in the second round. But I mean, there wasn't really anything too surprising. The one name that I was just surprised not to see in there that I'm maybe a little bit high on, more high on than others, is just Christian Miller, defensive tackle out of Georgia. I really like his game. I think he's really good in the run game. I think he showed flashes of a pass rusher. And I would take a chance on him early in round two. Um, and then you just kind of look at it. A guy who I'm really happy made it was Oscar Delp, the tight end out of Georgia. I feel like he hasn't gotten enough hype kind of coming into this draft class. I think he moved really well for his size. He's an A+ run blocker. Not going to test with elite numbers, but I think is a guy who really can just start on day one in the NFL and make an impact. And the Eagles there is a really good place for him to kind of you know be able to fit in and work in the NFL. And then Chris Bell. I mean, I love Chris Bell. I hate that he got injured because I think we easily could have been talking about him into the first round. And then if you're Cleveland coming out of the draft with Fano, Concepcion, and Chris Bell, like that's an A+ right there in your first couple of picks. Yeah,
Seriously.
that's a really good job. And then McNeil Warren's another guy who I felt like can be a first rounder, but again, it's just how the draft works. Guys are going to fall, guys are going to get taken too early, and he's just that odd guy out where I could see being either taken to Chicago at 25 or falling into the early parts of round two.
And again, putting on my homer hat, if the Patriots were ever to be lucky enough to get Malachi Fields at 63, there's happy dances all across New England for that, because that's a true weapon and a true professional, I think, just in terms of fitting into the culture in New England.
Yeah, and Drake May likes to push the ball down the field, and that's exactly what Malachi Fields is good at. So
No doubt. Final thoughts from you on your mock, Tony?
It's done.
Thank goodness
I guess
it's done.
we'll have another one probably in a couple of weeks after final draft meetings, and then one, if not the likely the morning before the draft. Maybe expand it to 3 rounds. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But there'll be two more updates based on now what I'm hearing coming out of final draft meetings around the league.
Outstanding. And again, check out Tony's 4.0 mock draft. Check out Daniel's first mock draft with us on EssentiallySports.com. We'll be doing more of these more mock drafts, probably more than more than you could consume, but people love them, and we love doing them. We love the conversation, so we will continue that. We'll do some more live shows heading into as we get closer to the big days in Pittsburgh. But please check us out on YouTube. Check us out on wherever you get your podcasts. And Tony, you got some family stuff. A little window before calm before the storm, where you can do some stuff with the family. We wish you well on your travels, and get ready, man. You get back, and here it comes.
Yeah, well, if I'm not ready now, it's too late. But it is kind of freaky the way it sneaks up on you, and I start in May, so it is. You never really feel like you're totally ready, but you just got to go with it.
Exciting times. Daniel, appreciate you joining us. Great job out of the gate. We look forward to your contributions with the draft process. For Tony Pauline, for Daniel Rios, my name is Tim Wood. Thanks for joining us on another edition of the ES DraftCast with Tony Pauline. We will talk to you next week.